Thank you, Corey. Good morning, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving weekend. My name is Kathy Crane. I'm one of the board members here for UUFC, and I welcome you on this holiday weekend. I came through Seneca on 123 this morning. That highway was empty. And so I'm really, really glad to see you here. So welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson. We are located on the land of the Eastern Cherokee and Southern Iroquois. It is very, very good to be here with you. Each week, this community comes together to participate in worship, music, reflection. This is where we come to have our hearts opened and our imaginations fired, and this weekend especially to share gratitude. This is the place that reminds us that we are deeply connected to one another and all living things. If you're visiting with us this morning, welcome. If you choose to, we would invite you to stand and say hello and tell us who you are.
I'm Jennifer Duval, and I'm Sue and Jim Knowles' daughter, visiting from France for 2 weeks for Thanksgiving.
I met you on the hiking trail a while back. Yeah, nice to see you.
I'm Jim Nall. I've been here before a few times, but I just moved into Clemson this Monday, and Sue and I are both in Clemson Downs, and I've been a UU. Both of us have been UUs for 50-some years, since the late 60s, and I would expect to be active and I hope helpful here.
Jim Knoll, welcome. So Jim was sharing that he has just moved into Clemson Downs, he and Ellen, and Sue, sorry. Sue, I keep wanting to call you Ellen. I've done that several times. Fix that. Thank you. Anybody else want to say hello?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeff. I'm a customer, but it's been a while.
Hi, Jeff.
I'm glad to be here. I look forward to the services and enjoy working with you in volunteer capacity.
Jeff, volunteer, excellent, thank you. Welcome, Jeff.
I'm Donna Brazil. Moved to the Clemson area last year. Was in UU in the 80s in Charlotte, and I'm happy to be here.
Donna, thank you. Welcome, Donna. So yeah, Karen and Mike are checking you out. They're from Charlotte a while back. Yeah, very good. And we'd like to welcome the viewers at home too. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This fellowship is a religious community grounded in heritage and principles of Unitarian Universalism. We seek to create a loving community, inspire joy and spiritual growth, and support courageous action. So all are welcome. All are welcome. If you're interested in getting a copy of our weekly e-newsletter, be sure that you sign up. Jim was already telling me about reading that already and has given me something for Habitat for Humanity. So yeah, I'm so glad that that's being read. So if you want that e-news coming to you, Sarah can help you signing a card out in the foyer so that you can get that. In that e-news, trying to get Susan's attention to say, Susan, come on in. In that e-news, there are announcements to be shared, and I want to point out some of them. Next Sunday, we're having the board meeting, and so that's sort of monthly. We didn't have one in November, so we're going to have a collective one in November and December, next Sunday, December 3rd, and it's then that we're going to work on the budget to present to you. So thank you to you for getting your stewardship information into us. If you've put that green envelope to the side, we're going to give you a call this week to see if we can nudge you to make that pledge, and thank you very much. So the congregational meeting will be in 2 weeks, December 10th at 11:45. We need a quorum, and that can happen virtually or in person. So if you are a voting member, please plan to attend. This coming Monday at 5:30 is a Vespers communion service here in our sanctuary. We're going to have a communion service in the Celtic Christian tradition. Then Saturday evening at 5 o'clock is our auction, our goods and service auction. Meg Williamson, your fireside has already sold out. Yeah, I went to look at the auction item. So items that are limited for certain people are first come, first serve. Other items you can bid on and the highest bidder gets it. Already folks are purchasing seats for some of our best chefs. Online bidding is open until 4:30 p.m. when it will all move here at 5 o'clock on Saturday. We are asked to bring our checkbook. For those of you that do donations online for your pledge or for anything, you'll notice that when you use your credit card, you get a little bit, 2.5% added to that. But if you use your checkbook, you don't get that extra fee. So please remember to use the checkbook.
What about cash?
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you, Elaine. Cash is definitely welcome. But you might bid more than the cash that's in your pocket. So bring that along. Friday brings in December, and it also brings in the first hula hike of the season. And I want to point out down towards the bottom of the back of your announcements, it talks about the Worthy Now Prison Ministry Network that's hosted by the UU Church of the Larger Fellowship. People can sign up to send holiday messages. So to do just a one-time involvement, if you want to do that. I've heard from the Church of the Larger Fellowship that if they get 338 more people to sign up for holiday messages, then all of our incarcerated persons who identify as Unitarian Universalists will get at least 2 holiday messages. So take a look at that and help out if you can. So I want to end this announcement with this quote from Marcel Proust. "Let us be grateful for the people who make us happy. They are the charming gardeners who make our souls blossom." So let's sing hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses, stand as you are willing and able. The opening words come from Arlen Goff, Thresholds. Thresholds, we cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside and back again, from here to there, from anywhere to everywhere, from age to age. Each threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation, from what we were and what we are to what we can be. In this hour and in this place, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day everydayness into space and time attuned to the other, to the sacred, to the holy, into an awareness of new life pregnant with possibilities. How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed by this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of beloved community? Come, you longing, thirsty souls. Come, let us worship together. Reverend Holly.
Good morning. So good to see all of you today. I have asked Talia if she will come up and help with lighting our chalice this morning, as all of you are invited to read our words of affirmation, which you can find written in the order of service. We gather together in the spirit of love, with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another.
This morning's story comes to us from 4 Native creators, one of whom is a member of the Wampanoag tribe. And it is an imagining of what the story of that first Thanksgiving that we hear about so much this time of the year might look like from the Wampanoag perspective. Kipunamuk, Weochman's Thanksgiving story. I love your garden this time of the year, said Maple. Me too. What shall we pick for lunch? Asked Nukumus. How about crab apples? Maple suggested. No, chokecherries, Quill shouted. Those are both good medicine, Nukumus said. How about some Weochman as well? Yes, Maple replied. She is such a good big sister to beans and squash. The 3 sisters! They grow together, Quill added. You're right. They feed people all over Turtle Island, Nukumus said, and they have many stories to tell. Can you tell us a story? Quill asked. How about the time Weochman asked our Wampanoag ancestors to help the pilgrims? Nukumus replied. The first Thanksgiving? Maple asked. Some people call it that, Nukumus said. We call it Kipunamuk, the time of harvest. Here's what really happened. One frosty morning, a long time ago, a large boat with white sails approached the shore. Seagulls circled above the boat, squawking, "New people are coming! New people are coming!" Hearing the news, Weochman stretched her weary ears toward the sky. Who are these new people? She asked. 2 winters had passed since many of the first peoples who cared for Weochman passed on to the spirit world. Those who were not taken by the sickness found new homes to ease their heavy hearts and rebuild their lives. Weochman feared this winter would be her last and called upon Fox for help. Fox looked up at Weochman. Should we trust these newcomers? He asked. Stay close and watch what they do, Weochman said to Fox. Fall turned to winter. Weochman and the other plants fell asleep. Fox watched the newcomers come ashore. He watched as they made their way into the forest. He watched them enter an abandoned wetu. He watched them take a cooking pot and a basket of Weochman's seeds. Don't take us away, the seeds cried. We are waiting for the first peoples to come back in the spring to prepare our beds. We must grow first. But the newcomers could not hear the seeds. Their ears did not know the voices of the land. Fox watched the newcomers build houses on top of an empty village. He watched as they searched for food, but they could not find enough to eat. Many of the newcomers lost mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters during the long, cold winter. The First Peoples watched as well. News traveled fast among nearby tribes that newcomers had arrived. Nobody was sure what to make of them. For many years, others had traveled across the sea to hunt, fish, and trade. Some were friendly, and some were not. These new people seemed different. They were here to stay. Winter turned into spring. The sun warmed the earth. The newcomers continued their search for food. Weachaman woke from her long slumber and thanked the Creator for another season. She and her sisters, Beans and Squash, pushed through the ground and reached toward the sky. Fox returned to share what he had seen. The newcomers are hungry, Fox told the three sisters. They took Weachaman's seeds, but they don't know how to help them grow. Other animals came to hear what Fox had to say. We should help, Weachaman said. I agree, Beans said. Our home is their home now. I think we should too, said Squash. People help us grow. We must help, Deer said. We agreed to feed the people. In return, they care for the home we share. I wouldn't, said Fox. The newcomers don't know our world. Sometimes new people can seem very scary, Rabbit said. The Creator tells us to help all living things. This is how the world works. Yes, Duck and Turkey agreed. It's settled, said Weachaman. We will send the First Peoples to help the newcomers. Over the next few nights, Weachaman sent dreams to the First Peoples with a message. Bring me and my sisters to the newcomers. They are hungry and need help. The First Peoples listened. Their leader, Osamiquan, visited the newcomers. He could see that they wanted peace. Osamiquan introduced the newcomers to Tisquantum. Spring turned into summer. Tisquantum showed the newcomers how to raise Weachaman and her sisters, Beans and Squash. He taught the newcomers how to feed fish and seaweed to Weachaman to help her grow. Soon, Weachaman's seeds pushed through the earth and climbed toward the sky. Beans wrapped around Weachaman's strong stalks. Squash stretched her vines across the ground, keeping Weachaman's bed cool and moist. Summer turned to fall. Weachaman brimmed with food. So did Beans and Squash. Weachaman smiled as the newcomers thanked Tisquantum and the First Peoples for their help. Kipunamuk, the time of harvest, had come. The newcomers prepared a feast to celebrate the first year in their new home. They fired muskets in celebration. Boom, boom, boom. Osamiquan, warriors, and other First Peoples arrived. They feasted for 3 days. That meal changed both their lives and ours forever. Many Americans call it a day of Thanksgiving. Many of our people call it a day of mourning. That's different from what we learn in school, said Maple. It was Weachaman and the other beings of the land, sea, and sky who made the newcomers' first harvest possible? That's right, Newcomus said. This is why we pray before we eat. Well, what did the newcomers and our ancestors eat, Newcomus? Quill asked. Many things. Succotash, duck, turkey, rabbit, deer, lobster, fish, pumpkins, cranberries, boiled bread, and nussump, Newcomus said. All this talk about food is making me hungry, said Maple. Let's go make us some lunch then, Newcomus laughed. And we'll enjoy every bite, said Quill.
Thank you, Karen. Those were amazing names. Well done. Yeah, that was clear. So if the rest of you got hungry too, I forgot to share with you that we're having leftover desserts with our hospitality this afternoon. All are welcome. So come on down the hallway and in the social room to the left, and we'll have coffee and desserts and fellowship. So this is the time we set aside for the offering in order to give toward the financial vitality of this community. Also, 25% of the weekly collection each week goes to an organization in the local community with whom we partner. For the month of November, we are partnering with Clemson Community Care, for whom we are also collecting the food. For those at home, you can go to UUFC website and use the donate button, and there you'll see options for paying your pledge, and donating toward the organizations we partner with. Thank you for your generosity.
Thank you for the giving of these gifts that make the ministry of this congregation possible. So we have a time set aside during our services each week for the sharing of joys and concerns. This is a time of sacred sharing for us to be together, whether these are read aloud or they remain quiet and tender upon your hearts. This is a time that allows us to hold one another in love and care. As I read each of our joys and concerns, I've asked Kathy to place a stone into this shared vessel that represents our community of caring. JB shared that Clemson won against USC last night. Have a joy from Mary Elizabeth Land that her mother, age 91, had a very tough week medically, but seems to be doing much better, and grateful for her improvement. A joy from Talia that her school had a whole week off. Yes. A joy from Sarah McNeil. I'm sharing my joy at having a great trip to visit family and friends in Illinois, especially my great-granddaughter, Lily. A joy from Cody Moss that today is her mom, Carrie's birthday. Happy birthday! And we have a concern from Elaine Faithful that her older brother had a triple bypass surgery this week, and sad that she cannot be there with him. And we add one, oh, sorry. It's okay.
But I want to sincerely thank Barbara and Alan for
Yes.
hosting and the Thanksgiving luncheon that we had this past week.
Yes, yes. And so that everybody can hear online and hear that a gratitude, a joy shared for Alan and Barbara hosting a Thanksgiving meal here at the fellowship on Thursday.
It was a team effort.
And it was a team effort. It looked like a good group of folks came and enjoyed and helped make it possible. Thank you. And we add one final stone for all of those joys and concerns that remain unspoken. I would now like to invite you into a spirit of prayer and meditation as you hear these words, the heart of the both and. Spirit of life, ever adapting and renewing, we come together this morning with yearnings that do not match. We yearn for stability, even in one moment feeling like we know what is going on, for the ability to predict and prepare for what is coming next. Yet, we also yearn for change. We ache for a world that turns aside from racism, violence, dehumanization, and disregard for suffering. We pray for a change in illness, grief, isolation, incarceration, and vulnerability of our loved ones. We reach for connections that will remind us that we are worthy as we are, and we reach for connections that will help us become our best selves. Hold us in the heart of both and, cradle us in the mystery, cherish us in the eternal presence of love, and encourage us on the path of growth and development. As individuals and as people, help us become who we are called to be. Lead us to open pathways, to deeper wisdom through reconciliation, self-respect, and mutual respect, compassion, owning and making amends for our mistakes. Source of wonder, move us to express and live in gratitude for the beauty of this world, the loving people in our lives, and this a day of possibility. To this, we add the meditations of our heart as we enter into a moment of silence, followed by the choir performing.
You can hold my hand when you need to let go. I can be a mountain when you're feeling valley low. I can be a street light showing you the way home. If you hold my hand when you need to let go.
If we want a garden, we're gonna have to sow the seeds, plant a little happiness, let the roots run deep. If it's love that we sow, then it's love that we reap. If we want a garden, we're gonna have to pull the weeds. Yeah.
door is always open, your picture's on my wall. Everyone's a little broken, but everyone belongs. Yeah, everyone belongs.
Want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let us take on the world while we're young and able, and bring us back together when the day is done. And bring us back together when the day is done. When the day is done.
Thank you. That was lovely. This is Advent season. Today is the first Sunday of Advent, but we're going to do things a little bit differently this year. Because of our new wonderful arrangement up here, we simply don't have space for 4 Advent trees, for one thing. So we only have 2 trees this year, but there are still 4 Sundays of Advent. And rather than doing the traditional Christian themes for Advent, this year we thought we might make it a little bit more UU. So each week we are going to add ornaments to our tree that represent one of our 8 principles. Well, actually, that means 2 ornaments every week because 8 divided by 4 is 2, right? So our first 2 ornaments will be for our first principle and our second principle. And for our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, we have a selection of little people that have little red hearts in them. And they are in a variety of skin tones, and we have to thank Mel for the creative faces on them. She did most of that. And for our second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, we have our 3D hearts, which would be familiar from past years. So I would like to invite at this time our children and youth and anyone else who is willing or able who would like to come up and take an ornament from the basket and put it on either of our 2 trees. Okay. And Aurelia gets to do the last one. I think we favored this tree a little bit more. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for helping put up ornaments, and thank you to Karen and Mel for making the beautiful ornaments for our Advent tree this year. So, I have a question for you, and if you can, be honest. Have you ever made a mistake? Okay, good. I think most of us have at some point in our life, right? So, to provide a little more context for today, have you mistakenly thought a story was true and later realized that it was not? I think we all make those kind of mistakes because we have it from a trusted source. Maybe it's the schools that we were educated by. Maybe it was a friend or a family member. And we come to find out later that that wasn't the whole story. I had a seminary friend when we were on our trip to South Africa that kept asking this question: what is the true truth? Well, how do you get to the true truth unless you hear many voices, many perspectives? Because if you witness something, say you have somebody bump into you in the hallway, and you almost run into the person that ran into each other, but you stopped just in time. And you might be there to help somebody get up. You might be able to help move things so that nobody else bumps into what's going on in the hallway. But each of you is going to have a little bit different perspective of what happened. And so it is important for the stories to be told from as many different perspectives as possible, because there's great power in stories. It's that both and that the prayer lifted up. The both and a good story can do great good, and it can do great harm, depending on the reason the story is being told. We tell history. What happened, whether it was a few hours ago or hundreds of years ago, from the perspective of the person telling the story. You might often hear the saying to consider that to the victor goes the spoils of war, more to the point, or the history that was written by the victor. And while this does not always ring true, in a lot of cases, it is who had the most privilege that gets to tell the story. And it can be so challenging for us to define what is a story, like the tradition shared in The Time for All Ages by Karen from the indigenous perspective, or that of the settlers, the colonizers, if you will, that came here. Difference in perspective can make a difference in how we understand the world. It can be different than what we grew up hearing. So I went back and watched a movie that is one of my favorite movies, or two movies. Have any of you here ever watched Addams Family or Addams Family Values movies from the 90s? Okay, so there is a scene, strangely, in Addams Family Values that depicts a summer camp putting on a play about Thanksgiving. Now, you caught that, summer camp putting on a play about Thanksgiving. And it depicts them singing about a turkey singing "Eat Me" as the starting one, which seems kind of weird. But then it moves into the pilgrims inviting the Indians to come in and join their celebration and, talking about them as if they are noble savages. But then you have Wednesday Addams that comes forward dressed in indigenous garb and proclaiming that she is Pocahontas. And in doing so, she says that she has heard that this will not be a good relationship, that great harms will be done to her people. And so then all of the kids dressed up in indigenous garb have flaming bows and arrows and shoot the arrows into this festive Thanksgiving scene in the summer. And so I thought about that last year after I watched it, and again this year. Man, compared to the narratives that I was hearing in school at that point that were reinforcing that myth of the first Thanksgiving, this disrupted that. It subverted that narrative of peaceful gathering and spoke to the realities of genocide and land theft in a movie that I didn't even realize at the time that that was a message that was there. And Thanksgiving is tricky because we want to continue to remember it as a tradition of celebrating with friends and families and loved ones, while also recognizing this myth is a fallacy. It is a whitewashing of our history. And as was mentioned in the Time for All Ages, it's also known by Indigenous people as a day of mourning, or a term that has been coined in the last few years of Thanksgrieving, that balance between encompassing the both and of being thankful and of mourning. Because both things can be true, right? We can celebrate and be thankful while we also express our sorrows and our mourning. It's something that we hear every week with our joys and concerns that are lifted up. And there's been more light shown on how harmful colonialism has been and the myths that it continues to perpetuate. And while that has been shifting, we are also witnessing renewed attempts at undoing that learning, to ban books and classes that are in areas that speak about these events in a more honest, well-rounded story. As people of faith who affirm and promote a series of principles, including the two that we are lifting up on our tree today, of the inherent worth and dignity of all people, and justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, how can we remain silent when history, that well-rounded history of many stories, is being silenced, as books are being banned? Well, don't fear, we have some folks here that are working to make sure that those books are available and accessible. And we're going to keep talking about it here so all of you can get to hear those different stories. It is not always such a clear path of what we can do in the bigger scope of our lives. So I invite you to consider some of the ways that you could continue to reframe this narrative, to focus less on the mythic origins of a holiday that we celebrate every November, maybe thinking of it as a harvest festival or a time of celebration of your gratitudes rather than reflecting on that original Thanksgiving myth. And I've been wondering, as we shift our understanding, what is the tipping point? Where is there enough change? And this was inspired by a quote from the Reverend Angel Cotto Williams, a Zen priest known for her book, Radical Dharma. She said, quote, "There is something dying in our society, in our culture, and there's something dying in us individually. And what is dying, I think, is the willingness to be in denial. And that is extraordinary. It has always been happening, and when it happens in enough of us, in a short enough period of time, at the same time, then you will have a tipping point, and the culture will begin to shift," end quote. Shifting the narratives shifting our paradigms, help us see more of the story. Origins of our country are powerful, recognizing that we have been told a story that makes it easier to digest genocide. Shifting away from the language of finding the new world or pursuit of freedom, even religious freedom, and towards the recognition that atrocities were committed to steal land from those that occupied this land prior to arrival of Europeans. I didn't have this written down, but I thought about it earlier this week. Have any of you ever seen a stand-up comedian named Eddie Izzard? Yes. There is a skit that was done a number of years ago as part of a stand-up comedy routine, and in it, Eddie depicts coming to New World and coming into an area and being like, look at this pristine wilderness, everything is so beautiful, nobody's ever been here, oh, pardon me, sorry, as bumps into people that were already there, and then continues on about planting a flag. And I claimed this land in the name of England or Spain or whichever country they were using in illustration. And then indigenous people asking, well, we were here. What do you mean this is your land? Well, do you have a flag? Well, no. Well, oh well, you know, kind of sentiment. And, you know, it's much more fun with his original telling of it. But it came to mind as I was thinking about how we can talk about this understanding of our history, and that does it in a very tongue-in-cheek way, but with a reality in there as well. And so I asked y'all if y'all had made a mistake earlier, and I made a mistake, or at least I feel like I did looking back on it. When I worked in history museums for about a decade, I was there one Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and we were locking up, and my boss put a sign on the door. And on this sign, it said that we were closed for Thanksgiving, Thursday and Friday, but it also had a picture of the myth of the first Thanksgiving. But even it was really odd, and I did point that out because it showed the pilgrims giving the indigenous people food. But I didn't ask further. I didn't push on that and say, well, why do we even need that picture? Why is that what we're depicting as a history? And, you know, 10 or years more down the road, I think I would have said something different to him because I have come to understand the history in a different way. And, you know, maybe I backed down because it was the end of the day and we were leaving for a holiday. Maybe it was because he was my supervisor and I wasn't as comfortable with confrontation about an issue that I was sure he would have lots to say. And I can't go back and change that. But I can make different choices going forward into the future. We can all make different choices going forward into the future about how we handle different topics of conversation, even when they're uncomfortable. And I've said it before, probably here already, is as a minister, I think of my role as to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. And so a little over a week ago, I was talking to Karen Hebel, our Director of Life long faith formation, if I get that all right, about Thanksgiving, and was thinking about like, oh gosh, we're having an intergenerational service. I want to make it where we have lots of things going on and it's fun, but also I really want to talk about a difficult topic. And we talked it through, and we decided that I was going to talk about a difficult topic, but that we were going to have the Advent tree and the story during the service to try to split things up a little bit more. So, I have another question for you. You might notice I like questions today. Have you ever heard the quote, the saying from one person or another about the arc of the moral universe being long but bending toward justice? Okay, so who here knew that it was originally a longer quote by the Reverend Theodore Parker, one of our Unitarian ancestors? Okay, a few of you. Who here knew that it is shared in a shorter version by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Okay, so that's where that saying comes from. And I want to push us a little bit more, not to see the arc bending towards justice on its own, not just saying we can't see the end of that arc, but to recognize our place in the world of working towards a more just and loving and compassionate world, and that we need to help that arc bend. Because without all of us being willing to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, how much is that arc going to bend in our lifetime? While we may not see the end, we may have an impact on it. Because I want you to think for just a moment, no matter how old you are, how much has the world changed in your lifetime? A lot. Yeah, it's changed a lot. And if we continue those changes, incremental though they may be, even though it sometimes feels like we're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, as we are seeing things that are being banned, like the books, but eventually, enough of us will change enough in society that we will reach that tipping point. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be in 20 years, but eventually we will reach that tipping point. And I hope that we are getting closer to that tipping point. That's what gives me hope, looking forward into the future. As a culture, I'm going to say some words that are sometimes challenging for people to hear. As a culture, we are bound up. We are swimming in shark-infested waters of 3 coexisting systems of white supremacy, colonialism, and capitalism. And they work really hard to maintain themselves. And we may not be intentionally doing anything that perpetuates that, but just by our very existence in this society, we continue in those systems because as long as they exist, we have to exist within them on some level. And we can't dismantle them all at once, but over time, change does and can happen. And as a seminary professor of mine was fond of saying, once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once you know there is an issue, you can't unknow it. There is so much going on in the world around us, so many things demanding our attention, and it can feel overwhelming at times to take an active role in changing the world. And there is a seismic shift that is happening in our world and in our faith, our denomination, Unitarian Universalism. And I believe they reflect one another. I believe that Unitarian Universalism has the power to be a catalyst in some of those shifts. A commitment to liberation work that is grounded in love is essential to tip the balance, to bend the arc towards justice. But we cannot do it alone. We need one another. We are stronger when we work together because we can engender more change in the world through our actions in our community and out in the world around us. And while it's easy to sometimes get bogged down in all that is wrong with the world, I want to invite you to remember those changes that you have witnessed in your lifetime and hold on to hope that more change can happen. What are you as an individual doing? What is this congregation doing? And what is the impact in our communities, in the wider world? When you go forth today, may you carry the power of change to create the future, to move us closer to a more just and loving world that we dream of. May it be so, and blessed be. You are now invited to rise in body or in spirit, wherever you are, to join in singing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. For our closing words, I share a quote from Jean Houston. Change the story and you change perspective. Change perspective and you change the world. As we extinguish this chalice, may we carry the light with us, a light of change into the world until we are together again. Go in peace and return in love.